How are we going to know it's recording this time?
It is, because I just heard.
All right, then you're just going to cut it out?
Yeah. Hey everyone, Chris Myers, President of Chicago Young Republicans, coming to you live today with Illinois Secretary of State candidate Jason Helland. Jason, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having
Appreciate
me.
you coming out. We've got a beautiful day out here in Chicago overlooking the beautiful city skyline. Appreciate y'all tuning in for this series where we're interviewing the candidates to talk about what's going on here in Illinois, talk about what our candidates are doing to support. So Jason, could you talk to us a little bit about, as you're running for Secretary of State, tell us about yourself, help us get to know you. Where are you from? What are you about? What are you passionate about?
I have a pretty interesting background. I grew up in rural Grundy County on a farm, which is about 60 miles southwest of Chicago. Graduated Seneca High School in 1994. Ended up going to Joliet Junior College. I'm a product of the community college system. I got my law enforcement degree there in 1996. A lot of what people don't know about the Secretary of State is that the Secretary of State has a police force, and I have that law enforcement degree. Once I got out of Joliet Junior College, I transferred to the University of St. Francis in Joliet. I got my political science degree there in 1999, and I ended up, after I got my law degree, I was a adjunct faculty member there for 7.5 years, so I got to teach a lot of future attorneys and law enforcement and correctional officers at the school, so it was fun giving back to the school. But nobody in my family has a law degree. I decided to go to John Marshall Law School. I graduated there in 2003. When I got out, I knew what I wanted to do with my law enforcement background. I wanted to work as a prosecutor. I got hired at the Kankakee County State's Attorney's Office. I've been a prosecutor in Kankakee and now Grundy County for almost 15 years. I've been elected Grundy County State's Attorney twice, starting in 2012 and re-elected in 2016.
Nice. So you've got some experience kind of knowing what the voters are interested in and how to talk to the voters, so that's great. So as you're looking at Secretary of State, tell us, why are you running? Why now? What is it about this time that is the best for this cycle?
With politics, it's all about being at the right place in the right time. In 2018, we believe we're at the right place in the right time, and that's because Jesse White is the longest serving Secretary of State in the history of Illinois, with serving 5 full terms. And when we took a look at this candidacy, there's no better evidence of somebody's intent than their words. And since 2009, Jesse White has stated he wants to retire. So 10 years ago, he said he wanted to retire, and we believe he's not capable of doing another 4-year term, and we're at the right place and the right time. If he doesn't retire, he's simply running because Madigan is using his name to maintain that position, to maintain thousands of patronage jobs.
Interesting. So, if I stack this up right, we have the longest running Speaker of the House in U.S. history.
That's accurate.
Coming up with the longest running Illinois Secretary of State in our history. And we have all these problems in Illinois. Do you think it's from somebody who came around from a couple years ago, or was it around from that? So kind of interesting there.
Jesse White has served in the Illinois legislature, the Cook County Recorder of Deeds, and the Secretary of State's office for longer than I've been alive. And I'm 42 years old. There's a lot of states that have term limits, and it was never the intent when they passed the 1970 Illinois Constitution for people to have lifelong career jobs in government.
Yep.
There's a need here for fresh blood and fresh ideas.
Yep. I think what most of our viewers probably find interesting is Speaker Madigan has been Speaker of the Illinois House longer than most of our members have been alive.
That is accurate.
That's pretty scary.
That is accurate.
So, where did the problem come from? Let's think about this, folks. So, Jason, if you could, tell us, when you get elected, what are 2 to 3 things that you want to work on right from the start?
First things first, Illinois is in terrible financial shape. We have to look at the ability to reduce jobs, and the way we're going to reduce jobs is that the Secretary of State's office has failed to fully embrace technology, and technology would reduce jobs. You go to a fast food place, they got a kiosk where you're placing your orders now. That's the reduction of jobs. I'm not in favor as a person of reducing jobs, but we have to because the budget crisis mandates us to do that. And one of the examples of how the budget crisis has affected the Illinois motorist is when the Illinois budget impasse hit a couple years ago, the Illinois Secretary of State stopped sending renewal notices for license plates out. As a result, they collected more than $13 million in late fees. So let's think about this. The Secretary of State's office was inefficient, and as a result of being inefficient, not sending out the renewal notices, not getting your renewal fees, they ended up collecting $13 million because they're inefficient. That's not fair. I don't know about you. I know about me. I've never paid a bill that I never received. And that's an example of an inefficiency.
Yep.
There's so many inefficiencies in this office. White's just there to control all of Madigan's jobs, and they have no inclination to try and reduce jobs because that's just less people they got working on their campaigns.
Yep.
I mean, there's so many issues. The Federal Real ID Act, after September 11th, the federal government passed a law in 2005 that you needed to be Real ID Act compliant. And essentially what that would require the Secretary of State's office to do is if somebody got a driver's license and they're going to get on an airplane, they have to run a criminal background check on that individual to make sure our airways are safe. And they have failed to do that, and they have failed to comply with that law for the last 13 years. And I know as state's attorney, if I didn't follow the law for 13 years, I'd expect to be fired. Jesse White should expect to be fired, but it's really going to hit because they got an extension to comply with this law all the way up to October 31st. If you have to fly on November 1st, and you got to fly all the way from Chicago all the way to Milwaukee, you're going to need a passport if we're not Real ID Act compliant. And that's when it's going to have serious consequences to the voters when the inefficiencies really hit home.
Yeah, that's crazy. Can you folks imagine having to get a passport just to fly from here in Chicago to Moline, just literally across the state, couple-hour drive? Does that make any sense whatsoever? So, as we highlight some of these issues, tell us about a story from the campaign trail. What's something you've come across, something fun as we talk to the voters to get to know that you're crisscrossing the state, doing the work to get to know them as we go through this cycle?
Well, at this point, I've been in over 60 counties, and a lot of the complaints revolve around the DMV and their inefficiencies. One voter told me that when he went to the DMV on a Saturday morning between 9 and 9:30 in the morning, that he's turned away for services when they're open till noon because they had too many people waiting in line to serve that day, and they told him to come back another day. And that's where we got to look at being more efficient and being able to process more people and not necessarily inside the DMV office. More stuff must go out there online. As far as my personal campaign, I am fiscally conservative to the core. I know we have to look at this budget. We got to reduce the budget. We got too much money coming out of the Secretary of State's office. One example would be when I was talking to an Illinois legislator, is that during the budget impasse, Jesse White took $40 million from Mike Madigan, hid it in his budget, and built a school in Madigan's district and Barbara Flynn Curry's district. And for those people that aren't legal eagles, it's not the Secretary of State's job to build schools in anybody's district. And the fact that he took $40 million out of his budget, hid it for Madigan, then built schools in prominent Democrats' districts, that's wrong, and it was unlawful, and he was not held accountable for that.
Yeah, that's awful. I don't know if anybody on the video has been out to Speaker Madigan's district out on the southwest side of the city, but it's one of the nicest districts I've ever been to. It's white picket fences and edge sidewalks. There's no cracks in any of the sidewalks everywhere. Perfect garbage pickup. It's pretty amazing. It's nicer than some of the places I've been on the far north side or the far west side. So, what if we had that same district set up in these other districts that are struggling? That's the challenge. So, why, Speaker Madigan, are you taking all this favor and sticking it and giving it to your constituents when the rest of the state's struggling? You've been around for a long time, so you know how to play this game, but, the rest of us are getting stuck with your bill.
This election is a term limit election. Jesse White must be term limited to the 5 full terms that he's already served. Is he running for a 6th term because he didn't accomplish all his goals in the first 20 years? I mean, seriously, what are his goals that he has not accomplished in the first 20 years? We believe that he's simply holding this position for an appointment for a prominent Democrat, whether it's Tony Preckwinkle, Todd Stroger, or another Madigan that's looking for a job at the end of the year. All individuals who have never met a tax increase they didn't like. The one last story I'd like to tell about the campaign trail is during the campaign cycle, I started this campaign last fall during the petition season. I started the campaign driving a $600 Crown Victoria from the Elgin Police Department. And I told my wife, I'm so fiscally conservative, I'm going to prove to all the voters that you can do something on a shoestring budget. And we're on plan B. I mean, it sounded good. It lasted for about 6 months. But when I gave my wife a call from Utica, there was never a worse feeling in my mind when my wife was right and I was dead wrong. And even as an attorney, I had no argument for my behavior. And I had to call and ask for a ride from Utica because my car broke down. And my wife just said, I told you so, find your way home. And I had to get a tow truck to drive me home. And the next day I ended up buying a Ford Fiesta, brand new. Cheapest car I could buy off Ford for 0 miles, $14,000 out the door. And that's such a luxury vehicle, they don't even make it anymore.
Pretty crazy. So Jason, as we wrap up here, could you talk to the voters about what is it that you want them to know as they're out talking to their friends, family, neighborhood, acquaintances, colleagues, as they're out talking about you and your campaign, what is it that you want them to know? And then how can we support you? What are the things that we can do to make sure that Jason Helland replaces Jesse White, longest serving Illinois Secretary of State in our history, in November?
The voters absolutely have to know that the 2018 election is one of the most important elections in our lifetime. And the reason it's one of the most important elections is that the Illinois exodus is real. One of the main issues when I'm talking to the voters is, what's your retirement plan? We've had a lot of people that I've talked to, they all want to leave Illinois. They're building up pensions here, but they're going to spend pensions in other states because right now, Nashville is Chicago South. And that's why it's important. We're going to lose 2 congressional seats, possibly after the 2020 census, and their vote does matter. They can't say your vote doesn't matter and they're going to stay home. We have to change the people that are responsible for the problems in the state of Illinois. Yep. As far as our contact information on Facebook, Jason Helland, we have about 2,100 followers right now.
Nice.
And jasonhelland.com. You can go on the website, go to the contact portion of the website, and reach out to us. And there's a whole myriad of duties any volunteer can do. Whether it's putting out yard signs, whether it's making phone calls, whether it's canvassing neighborhoods, we need all hands on deck to help us get past the finish line on November 6th. And this is an important election and your vote matters.
Perfect. So want to thank Jason for coming out and spending some time with us today. Beautiful Chicago day. Wonderful view of the skyline. Great to be out here. Nice little breeze. So thank you all for tuning in. Look forward to the next opportunity to sit down and talk to a candidate who we need to get into office this election cycle. We need your support. If you could like the video, share the video, visit us at chicagoyrs.com. That'd be great. Thank you all. Signing out.